But the problem is that at the time they were, all the money was going to the nobility and nothing was going to the average person, right? And so then one of her advisors says, well, Madam Queen, whatever, you realize that the people have no bread, right? And she says, well, let them eat cake, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not that anybody here on the Republican side, doesn't have moral values. They just don't understand. They just don't understand what's going on out there, right? And so they say, well, we're going to have work requirements. But then if you look at the states that had these work requirements, like Arkansas or Georgia, we find that almost everybody who was eligible for
committee print late Sunday night after the Budget Committee ordered the legislation reported, and we posted a comparative print at the same time showing the changes between the reported bill and the Rules Committee print. There have been many complaints from my friends on the other side about not knowing about whether there will be a manager's amendment and what will be in it. There will be a manager's amendment. It is how reconciliation has operated under both Republican and Democrat control. I certainly can't control the time that it will be ready, but I can assure my Democrat colleagues that they will certainly have more time than we were given in 2009 when a 309-page manager's amendment was dropped on us when the ranking member began reading the motion to report a rule for H.R. 2454. 309-page manager's amendment was dropped on us when the now ranking member began reading the motion to report a rule for H.R. 2454. The record is there. Our friends on the other side of the aisle love to cherry pick the facts about how this meeting is taking place in the dark of night. They've done it for several committee markups thus far. Never mind the fact that the only reason the hearings went as long as they did was because Democrats engaged in the legislative process, which is their right. But here's the thing, they can't have their cake and eat it too. They cannot complain about reporting legislation in the dark of night when the only reason it went so late was because of their own actions. Now, in the case of the Rules Committee, the same holds true. The Rules Committee has a long tradition of meeting late into the evening and reporting legislation long after most of America has gone to bed. It is our duty to advance the agenda of the House of Representatives, the people's house. Let's roll the clocks back to when Democrats held the majority in the 110th and 111th Congress. They reported legislation out of the Rules Committee well into the twilight hours. I know of what I speak. I was on the Rules Committee then. For example, HRes 587, 3:47 a.m., HRes 481, 2:09 a.m., HRes 597, 3:43 a.m., HRes 903, 2:25 a.m., and HRes 445 in the 116th Congress, 12:20 a.m. I do not think there's anything wrong with this. It is how the committee has operated when necessary. It has occurred under Democrat and Republican control. In this case, I do believe we'll be reporting not in the dark of night, but after the day has dawned. I encourage my colleagues on the other side to prove me wrong. Now to the business that's before us this morning. There'll be a lot of commentary from our friends across the aisle about what is not within this legislation. We'll experience ad nauseum a lot of granular level grievances, legislative indigestion, and I'm sure considerable allergic reactions to everything under the sun. It'll be the same song and dance routine that we've seen and heard for months, likely with more drama than Shakespeare on the Hill. Despite their misleading rhetoric and talking points, Democrats had their opportunities to deliver when they had full control and passed their own reconciliation packages. They did nothing to make the middle class centered Trump tax permanent. Despite the existence of the expiration of these tax cuts within their 10-year window, they refused. They even refused to raise the top income tax bracket, despite all their campaign talking points. Instead, they passed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act and the so-called American Rescue Plan Act that led to reckless spending and record inflation. But Republicans are here to do our jobs. And our jobs, in this case, isn't out of discretion. It's grounded in statute. We're considering legislation that executes the instructions given to the committees pursuant to the budget resolution, one that passed both chambers and is binding on this body and the Senate. And our express purpose is this: to ensure that our federal spending, taxation, and other revenue generating concepts align with the current needs of the American people. The American people and this government, by extension, cannot afford inaction. Americans need this legislation to ensure our economic survival and the sustainability of this Republican government. Americans cannot afford the largest tax hike in our nation's history. Americans cannot afford the runaway, endless spending machines that Democrats have enshrined via their policies. Americans cannot afford the inflation caused by the Democrats in the last 4 years. Americans cannot afford a soft, fragile embrace of President Trump's successful policies on the border, national security, and growth. Inflation has fallen to the lowest level in more than 4 years as April's consumer price index smashed expectations for the third straight month. Workers' real wages are up 1.9%, increasing each of the last 3 months. Encounters with gotaways, the top threat to public safety, are down by 95%. In March of 2025, fentanyl traffic at the southern border fell by 54% compared to March of 2024. Lastly, Americans and this government cannot afford to ignore the specific pro-growth provisions that President Trump campaigned on. Our bill delivers on the specific acute policies American workers embraced. We end taxes on tips. We end taxes on overtime. We boost tax deductions for seniors. We expand family-centered tax incentives like the child tax credit, the standard deduction, and family leave. The One Big Beautiful Bill is our answer to the American people's mandate from November. It is a clear, full-throated response to the millions of hardworking men and women across the entire nation who demand a serious course correction from the last 4 years and the setting of our fiscal situation on a sustainable footing. The committees within the House have all completed their respective parts, and all the pieces have come together. I commend all the committees, chairmen, members, and staff who worked for months, often well into the night and early hours of the morning, to craft the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. We're here to finish the job and ship this legislation to the House floor. With that, I look forward to the discussion. I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, that's a lot to digest. Thank you. Madam Chair, before we get into the substance here, I've got a simple question. What the hell are Republicans so afraid of? What the hell are you so scared of that you guys are holding this hearing at 1 o'clock in the morning? It's a simple question that speaks to the heart of what's going on here, and one that I'm going to keep on asking. If Republicans are so proud of what is in this bill, then why are you trying to ram it through in the dead of night? If you guys are so proud to kick 14 million people off Medicaid, if you guys are so proud to rip food assistance out of the refrigerators of moms and dads and their kids, if you guys are so proud of shutting down rural hospitals and hurting our farmers, if you guys really think these are such great, awesome, beautiful things to do, like Trump keeps saying, then why not hold this hearing at 1 p.m. and not 1 a.m.? Why not debate this bill in prime time when most of the American people can watch? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I think it's prime time in Guam. And I think it's crystal clear. It's crystal clear to everyone what this is all about. Now, the chairwoman wants to pretend like meeting at 1 o'clock in the morning is business as usual around here. It is not. This is not normal at all. She had to go back 20 years into the archives to dig up a single example of rules meeting at 1 a.m. And I guess, is that supposed to be some kind of gotcha? I'm actually glad she went back 2 decades to bring it up, because in 2007, Democrats convened the Rules Committee at 1 a.m. to protect people's health care. You guys have us meeting at 1 a.m. to rip it away. Now look at the record. George W. Bush was president, and the Children's Health Insurance Program was about to expire. That's an actual emergency, not a fake emergency like this. He vetoed not 1, but 2 of the bills that we sent him because he didn't want to cover those additional kids. So you guys caught us doing what exactly? Trying to protect coverage for uninsured kids. Great, we're proud of that. There is no comparison here. This is a 1,000-page bill, for God's sake. 1,000+ pages, and you want to shove it through in the dead of night because Trump said, close your eyes and vote for it. You're using emergency procedures to jam this through Congress to meet an artificial deadline that you created yourselves because the billionaires just couldn't wait for their tax cut. It's astonishing, really. It takes my breath away. It's just over 100 days, and you guys have gone from promising to lower costs to ripping away people's health care. Now, of course, you don't want anyone to know what you're doing here. It's because you know that this bill betrays the people who voted for you. You have the most ineffective Congress in a century. You've passed almost no legislation into law. And this is how you want to roll out your big centerpiece legislation at 1 o'clock in the morning. This isn't just incompetence. It's much more nefarious than that. You are intentionally hiding what you are doing. What an insult to the people of this country. What disdain you guys must have for the people who voted for you. You know, people are so tired of getting screwed over by a system that doesn't work for them. America is fed up with this BS and people want change. And I don't blame them. I'm fed up too. They want us to make things better for regular people. And what your big, ugly bill does is the exact opposite. You guys and Trump are perpetuating the exact broken system that people hate. You're rigging things for the rich and powerful. More tax breaks for billionaires while regular people get screwed. More giveaways for those at the top while moms and dads struggle to get by. More loopholes into the tax code for Wall Street CEOs and bankers while working families fall further and further behind. That's the Republican agenda. That's what you guys think is big and beautiful. Greed, corruption, and tax breaks for billionaires. You want to steal from the wallets of working class people, steal from their ability to buy food and get health care, and then you have the nerve to claim that this bill is about cutting costs and reducing waste? Give me a break. This bill raises the debt limit by $4 trillion. $4 trillion with a T. Even your own members, budget hawks in the House and Senate, weren't happy with the latest version of this bill because they know it will blow up our deficit. And the true cost is likely trillions of dollars higher, a cost shouldered by the American taxpayer. So you want to cut taxes for the rich and pay for it by exploding the debt and stealing from the American people. Stealing from people with the least so you guys can give more to those with the most. And I just find that fundamentally wrong, fundamentally cruel, totally out of touch, and totally and fundamentally immoral. Now let me walk through what your bill does, since you guys are so eager to sweep it under the rug. First, you are making the biggest cuts to Medicaid in American history. As a result of this bill, nearly 14 million Americans will lose their health care, and millions more will pay higher premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. That's just a fact. Hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, and people will die. And not a single one of the proposals in your bill is about making Medicaid work better. Not one. Your bill doesn't save Medicaid. Your bill destroys Medicaid. We can and we should make Medicaid work better. Absolutely. Instead, your bill creates more red tape, more hurdles, and kicks struggling people off their health insurance. Now, who asked for this garbage? I mean, more red tape? Oh boy. When I talk to people back home, that's exactly what they want with their health care. More red tape. I mean, come on. And then, if that's not bad enough, you are making the biggest cut to food assistance in American history. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, at least 5 million Americans will lose food assistance under your plan. 5 million more hungry Americans because of this bill. And that's probably a lowball estimate, by the way. You're slashing benefits from children, from seniors living on fixed incomes, from veterans who served this country and now rely on food assistance just to get by. And why? And why? So that the top 0.1%, people making over $3.5 million a year, can pocket $314,000 a year in new tax giveaways. I mean, you are literally taking food off kids' plates to buy Elon Musk another yacht. I guess he's getting a good return on his campaign donations, but I just find this whole thing disgusting. And look, at the end of the day, this is simple. It is simple. It's about whose side you're on. You guys wrote this bill for the top 0.1%. You wrote it for the billion-dollar corporations who offshore jobs and dodge taxes. You wrote it for the big oil and big pharma CEOs who rip people off. You wrote it for the rich and famous, for the people who never, ever have to worry about where their next meal is coming from or how to take care of their elderly parents. So you guys picked a side, okay? You picked the billionaires. I get it. You want to betray the people who voted for you. You want to sell them out because Trump told you to. But guess what? Democrats are picking a side too. And we are siding with the vast, vast, vast majority of Americans who you are going to screw over with this bill. We are siding with the 14 million parents and grandparents who are going to get kicked off health care if this monstrosity passes. We're siding with struggling families who are already having a hard time buying groceries, and the farmers whose incomes will drop because you're gutting the nutrition programs to create demand for the food that they grow, and the rural grocery stores that they support, and the nurses who will lose their jobs when you start closing down rural hospitals. That's who we're siding with, and that's who we choose to fight for. Now, I've seen a lot in my time in Congress. I've seen my fair share of bad bills, but this takes the cake. This is not policy. This is theft. It is a direct transfer of wealth from the working and middle class to the ultra wealthy, and it's being done on purpose and under the cover of night. Republicans have had every opportunity to make life better for the American people. You guys have a unified Republican government. You have the House, you have the Senate, you have the White House. You could have invested in housing, in childcare, in clean energy, in community health. You could have closed tax loopholes and make sure that billionaires pay what they owe. Instead, you chose to side with those at the top. You chose to line the pockets of your rich donors, and the health and security of regular people be damned. This is not a governing philosophy. It is a scam. It is a scam. A scam. And I wasn't sent here to vote for trash like this. For the life of me, I cannot understand why you were doing this. Why the hell did you choose a career of public service just to do this? Just to rip away the health care and food assistance and security of working and middle-class Americans? Is that really what you came here to do? I don't understand this. I don't understand the cruelty. And let me say this to every Republican member who votes for this. You own it. You own it. You own every hospital that closes, every child that goes to bed hungry, every senior who loses care, and every American family forced to choose between groceries and rent, between their heating bill and their child care, between their kid's birthday party and their parents' long-term care. So you guys can force us to debate this bill in the dead of night. You can do it while the country sleeps. But the American people will wake up tomorrow morning, and I guarantee you they will wake up to how terrible your agenda is. They will remember this moment. They will remember who stood with the billionaires and who stood with them. We will make sure they remember, and I'll be damned if we let this pass quietly. I'm going to fight like hell, and I know I won't be alone. This is a farce, an outrageous insult to the people of this country to bring up a 1,000-page bill at 1 o'clock in the morning, a bill that's still being written, by the way, by Republicans as we speak in a back room somewhere, for God's sake. And then to try to jam it through Congress in the middle of the night when nobody is watching is just unbelievably cynical. This is why people hate Washington. So if you guys think this ugly bill is so damn beautiful, like Trump keeps saying, you should have the courage to debate it in prime time. Madam Chair, we should reconvene at a reasonable hour and debate your bill in full view of the American people, not in the middle of the night like cowards. And for that reason, I move that the Rules Committee do now adjourn.
The gentleman, the question is on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
As for a roll call, Madam Chair.
The gentleman has asked for a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll. Why don't you just let me call?
Ms. Fishbach?
No.
Ms. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman?
No.
Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy?
No.
Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy?
No.
Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Leger-Fernandez? Ms. Leger-Fernandez, aye. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the tally.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
The noes have it. We will move on. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our first panel, Chairman Rogers and Representative Smith from the Committee on Armed Services, Chairman Arrington and Representative Boyle from the Committee on the Budget, Chairman Hill and Representative Waters from the Committee on Financial Services, and Chairman Comer and Representative Lynch. There he is. Chairman Lynch from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Your full statements will be submitted for the record, and we ask that you summarize your statements in 5 minutes. Chairman Rogers, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern. I appreciate the opportunity to present the Armed Services Committee Reconciliation Title. The HAS title provides $150 billion in mandatory funding to modernize our military, revitalize the defense industrial base, and improve quality of life for our service members. The time for this level of investment is long overdue. The threats we face from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and others are much more complex and challenging than at any point in our history. We are being outpaced by our adversaries in the development and deployment of critical capabilities. Our defense industrial base is atrophied to the point where we may no longer be able to sustain prolonged conflict, and it all stems from a chronic underinvestment in our national security. Defense spending is not keeping up with inflation. In fact, we are currently at the lowest level of defense spending as a percentage of GDP since before World War II. That anemic level of investment is endangering our national security, and it must change. Reconciliation gives us the opportunity to do just that. It forces the department to start building the future of American defense now. It invests billions to accelerate deployment of new, low-cost, attritable autonomous systems. These unmanned air, surface, and underwater systems are the key to victory on future battlefields. The HAS title will go a long way toward restoring American deterrence and building our ready, capable, and lethal fighting force that President Trump has promised. Finally, I'm very pleased to be able to report that the committee reported this out on a bipartisan basis. I think that demonstrates the underlying bipartisan consensus we have to increase investment in our national security. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and for your help in moving this critical bill forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really just have 2 points. I mean, certainly I agree with the chairman of the Armed Services Committee that we face a very complex threat environment and a need to modernize our military in a bunch of different directions. I'm not sure I agree on what the total number of the budget should be for the House Armed Services Committee, but 2 crucial points. If you believe that the Defense Department needs more money, that we need to spend more money on defense, you cannot vote for this reconciliation bill. This reconciliation bill is going to cut taxes over 10 years by somewhere between $5 and $7 trillion, depending on how you guys all finally decide what you're going to put in there and what you're not going to put in there. It is going to increase the debt and the deficit by $3.5 trillion or thereabouts. So whatever we cram into this bill, whatever $150 billion, I guess they're going to try to throw at defense, will be irrelevant a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years from now, because our $35 trillion debt will continue to grow. Our $1.8 trillion yearly deficit will continue to grow. You won't have money to make an investment in anything, not even defense. So we are not going to see an increase in defense spending over the long haul because we are giving away all of the money. If, in fact, you believe that defense is that important, then you ought to be willing to pay for it. We simply cannot continue to borrow money forever. So it's not going to help defense. If you are a defense hawk, you cannot vote for this reconciliation bill, which leads into the second point. I have heard for a very long time from my Republican colleagues that the reason they have to pass their budget is because of the existential threat that the debt and the deficit pose for our nation. I wish I could replay all of the incredibly passionate speeches that I've heard on the floor and elsewhere from my Republican colleagues about how terrible this is. And that's what the reconciliation bill was going to do. And I can picture all of your constituents who you made these promises to, and then you get back here and you put this reconciliation bill up there and they say, well, how'd we do? How'd we do on getting the debt down? Well, it's difficult, it's complicated, but we actually added $3 trillion to it. So the budget hawks in the Republican conference, I mean, are you going to stand up tomorrow and say we were lying to you? We never really meant it? I mean, it's just ridiculous that you would consider passing a reconciliation bill that's going to add $3 trillion to the debt after, my gosh, the speeches I heard would have made you think that not getting the debt under control was going to kill us all in like a year. So this reconciliation bill is an utter disaster for the country for a lot of the reasons. I associate myself with many of the remarks that Mr. McGovern made on all the things that are being cut. But if you care about defense and you care about the debt, how in the hell can you vote for this? I mean, I look forward to someone making that argument at some point. So I hope that the Republicans who care about the debt and care about defense will vote this bill down. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Chairman Hill, you're recognized.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Ranking Member McGovern. I've never considered myself much of a morning person, and this takes it to a whole new level. A few weeks ago, the House Financial Services Committee completed work on the assignment to us on the budget resolution from Congress adopted early in April. The resolution asked us to decrease the deficit by at least $1 billion over the 2025 to 2034 period. We've done that. We've rescinded the remaining unobligated balances with the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Green and Resilient Retrofit Program created under the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. We ended the Public Accounting Oversight Board's authority to collect regulatory fees and transferred any unused balances to the Treasury. Audit oversight will continue without disruption. We put a firm cap on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's budget setting its funding at no more than $249 million for fiscal 2025, with an annual adjustment for inflation going forward. For the CFPB Civil Penalty Fund, once direct victims are compensated, remaining funds will be transferred to the Treasury's general fund. Finally, we capped the assessment collected by the Office of Financial Research at the Treasury, aligning them with the average annual expenses of the Financial Stability Oversight Council over the past 3 years. Any surplus will, once again, be returned to the Treasury. I'm pleased to report that the Financial Services Committee exceeded our instruction by the Budget Committee, and that the CBO estimates the deficit will decrease by $5.2 billion from the efforts of our committee. During our markup, we spent over 9 hours debating our portion of this reconciliation bill. We considered all 40 amendments that our Democratic colleagues offered and did not limit the minority's ability to propose modifications to the underlying legislative text. After this long, comprehensive process, we favorably transmitted our committee print to fulfill our obligations to the reconciliation bill before rules today. I want to thank all my colleagues. I want to remind all my colleagues to recall why we are here. The American people voted for fiscal responsibility. They voted for change. Our country is currently $37 trillion in debt, paying billions of dollars in interest each day on that debt. This year alone, we'll spend almost $1 trillion on total interest. If Congress fails to get our fiscal house in order, our debt will continue to grow exponentially, and our grandchildren will pay the consequences. For too long, government spending has been on a one-way ratchet up. So we're here today to finally do the difficult work of extricating our nation from this fiscal predicament. Financial Services Committee portion of the concurrent resolution does more than its part to reduce the deficit. I'm eager to finish our work and finally tackle these issues. I ask the committee for your support in advancing this bill to the House floor. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Representative Waters, you're recognized.
Well, I can't let that not be heard. Well, here we are. Republicans have dragged us here in the dead of the night under the guise of having a productive hearing about the GOP tax scam bill. But the truth is that Republicans couldn't care less about how bad this bill is. They're going to sit here and ignore every single thing that I and my Democratic colleagues have to say about this bill and how it will harm hard-working American families. And it's all because they are afraid of Donald Trump. They're so afraid of Donald Trump that they will gladly allow the American people to serve as collateral damage to the $5 trillion handout, $5 trillion handout to billionaires in this bill. They're so afraid of Donald Trump that they're okay with him getting richer while their constituents are getting poor. This isn't hyperbole. This is real life. This bill cuts programs that will literally make American families poor and make Donald Trump and his billionaire donors richer. I was there at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau after Trump and Elon Musk illegally attempted to shut down the Bureau. I heard from consumers about what shutting down the agency means for them. This is the very same agency that following the 2008 financial crisis, which many of us in this room remember, was created to stop predatory financial institutions from ripping off our constituents. The same agency that has saved American families $21 billion by returning to them funds that were swindled out of them. Trump failed to shut the agency down in court. So now they're trying to soliciting the help of Republicans. This bill, this budget scheme will slash the Bureau's budget by 70% and put the agency's crucial work, like cracking down on illegal junk fees, tackling discrimination in housing, and protecting service members and students from scams, to a grinding halt. This is all to cut taxes for billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Republicans are also pushing to gut the Financial Stability Oversight Council and Treasury's Office of Financial Research, agencies that are designed to prevent another financial crisis like the one in 2008. They're eliminating funding for affordable housing construction despite a national homelessness crisis. I also showed up at HUD because I know the harm this will pose to families. They're also so desperate to do Trump's bidding that they're eliminating another agency that doesn't cost taxpayers anything. The Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which oversees auditors to prevent frauds like Enron and ensure that companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party are on the up. What's even more sinister about Republicans dismantling our financial institutions, that they're doing this in the middle of an economic crisis. Our economy is falling behind Europe, China, and Canada. Americans are so economically anxious that they're holding off on starting a family and buying a home. The so-called pro-family party is making it harder for Americans to have kids and ripping away the American dream of home ownership. Inflation is rising, the dollar is down, yields are up, and borrowing is getting more expensive. And just this past Friday, Moody's lowered the United States credit rating because of Trump's reckless tariff policies and growing concerns about how this bill would jack up our debt by giving a massive, unnecessary handout to billionaires. Don't forget, he is all carrying out the most egregious crypto scheme in history, a scam that is enriching himself and his family while average investors lose money. But nothing in the bill addresses this crisis. Trump has thrown the U.S. economy. He's put us in this position.
Dads, kids, and people with disabilities. A 22% tax hike. House Republicans are making
Section 425 of that same act. House Resolution 436 states that all points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. Therefore, I make a point of order pursuant to Section 426 that this rule may not be considered.
The gentleman from Massachusetts makes a point of order that the resolution violates Section 426A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. The gentleman has met the threshold burden under the rule, and the gentleman from Massachusetts and a member opposed each will control 10 minutes of debate on the question of consideration. Following debate, the chair will put the question of consideration as the statutory means of disposing of the point of order. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order, Mr. Speaker.
The House will be in order. Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, let me say this once again. Democrats will not stand by and watch Trump and his billionaire friends destroy this country without putting up one hell of a fight. And because this rule
Be in order.
And because this rule waives the point of order against unfunded mandates, it is not in order to consider it on the floor. The bill Republicans are attempting to jam through the House this week cuts food assistance for moms and dads, kids and people with disabilities, veterans and seniors. It goes after the most important people in our lives, our families, all to fund a massive tax break for the richest people in this country. What the hell is wrong with these people, Mr. Speaker? But more than just a massive betrayal of the American people, this bill is also a massive new unfunded mandate on states. Don't just take my word for it. The nonpartisan experts at the Congressional Budget Office said that Title I of the bill, the Agriculture Committee's portion of this awful bill, would impose intergovernmental mandates by requiring states for the first time ever to provide state funding for food assistance benefits, increasing the share of food assistance administrative costs
paid by states and requiring state agencies to perform additional administrative duties. This massive new unfunded mandate would cost states a whopping $19 billion each year. And Mr. Speaker, where the hell are states going to come up with this kind of money? They can't. And so what will happen? So what will happen is the people will get kicked off of food assistance. They will get less benefits and they will go hungry. This will increase hunger. State after state, governor after governor has written to Congress begging us not to pass this awful bill. They have made it very clear that if this bill goes through, states will be forced to cut benefits, kick eligible people off of food assistance entirely, or raise taxes to pay for this massive new bureaucracy that Republicans are creating in every state. The chairman of the Agriculture Committee's home state of Pennsylvania would have to come up with over $1 billion to cover the state share of benefit costs. There is no state in the country who is able to take on this kind of massive unfunded mandate. So we're talking about basic needs for people, a food assistance benefit of $2 per meal so that people don't go hungry. And by the way, that money not only lifts people out of poverty, it improves health and uplifts local economies too. Hunger costs this country, and food assistance programs save us money. Workers who are hungry are less productive in work. Kids who go to school hungry don't learn. Seniors who take their medication on an empty stomach end up in emergency rooms. We live in the richest country on earth, for God's sake, and not a single kid in this country should go to bed hungry. Not a single damn one. And especially not when Republicans are giving millionaires and billionaires a big fat tax break. And I think Republicans.
House order.
And I think, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will suspend. Gentleman may proceed.
And I think Republicans know exactly what they are doing here. They know that this bill will kick millions and millions of people off of their modest food assistance. They know that their cuts will hurt kids and moms and dads and working families and seniors and veterans and people with disabilities. This is an unbelievably cruel and rotten thing to do. I reserve my time.
Reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to claim time in opposition to the point of order and in favor of consideration of the resolution.
The gentlelady is recognized for 10 minutes.
The question before the House is, should the House now consider House Resolution 436? The gentleman on the other side of the aisle is certainly correct. The bill before us today does impose a number of intergovernmental mandates, but let's look at what's considered in those. The bill requires states to have skin in the game on SNAP. The bill requires states to be more responsible about how Medicaid is funded. The bill provides needed tax relief for seniors. These are good things that reduce the size and scope of a federal government that is encroaching on the everyday lives of Americans, and it protects the American people from a Democrat Party that prioritizes illegal immigrants over vulnerable American families. In order to allow the House to continue,
The gentlelady will suspend.
in order to allow the House to continue its scheduled business for the day, I urge members to vote yes on the question of consideration of the resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, enough with the BS about states having skin in the game. This is about throwing families off of food assistance, and it's an awful thing to do. And at this point,
the House will be in order.
And at this time, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 2.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Connecticut, the ranking member of the Nutrition Subcommittee, Ms. Hayes.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise against this House Republican reconciliation bill that would put 42 million Americans at risk of losing their SNAP benefits. I'd argue that my state of Connecticut, that sends more money to the federal government than Indiana, already has skin in the game. As ranking member of the Nutrition and Foreign Agriculture Subcommittee, It's notable that we've had no hearings on the state cost sharing provisions or on the Thrifty Food Plan or on the impact of access to SNAP. House Republicans are pushing untested policy proposals that have real life consequences on the people in my community. During the agriculture reconciliation markup, I offered a common sense amendment stating that this legislation can only take effect once the USDA and all state agencies issue reports evaluating and certifying that any changes made to SNAP will not result in a reduction of benefits to individuals or decrease participation. No Republican on committee voted for that amendment. Hunger is a policy choice. And today we are considering legislation that makes the choice to take food away from people. The reconciliation bill we are considering here today is the largest ever cut to SNAP. Approximately $313 billion being taken away from the most vulnerable in this country. Hungry children, hungry families, hungry veterans, and hungry seniors. And I guarantee you, they're not just in Connecticut. Republicans are pushing a legislative package that guts SNAP, the most effective and efficient anti-poverty program in our nation. The cost-sharing provisions in this legislation are going to shift the financial burden to states, forcing states to cut benefits, eligibility, or both to reduce costs. They're pushing work requirements with no workforce development, pushing reporting requirements with no administrative reports, pushing for cuts to children who are on this program without considering that they will also lose free and reduced lunch at school. They don't want to feed kids at home. They don't want to feed kids at school. It is just cruel. Every provision in this program is cruel, and they know it. That's why none of them spoke on it in committee. That's why they were silent in budget. That's why they have nothing to say. That's why they have no response. That's why they don't hold town halls. That's why they don't answer questions. All they do is tweet, repeat, and hide in the back until they
Gentlelady's
vote
time
yes.
has expired. Gentlemen, the House will be in order.
I reserve.
The House will be in order.
I reserve.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlelady from Indiana is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, by the way, it's not just people in Connecticut that are threatened by this budget. I would say to the gentlewoman from Indiana that people in her district, there are 54,000 people in your district that are going to be threatened losing their SNAP benefits because of what you are voting for today, the Republican budget. So I don't know how you deal with that. At this point, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Ohio, the vice ranking member of the Agriculture Committee, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Ranking Member
The gentlelady is
McGovern.
recognized.
I rise in strong opposition to this rule and the underlying bill. Let's be clear. Republicans are paying for massive tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires by cutting $300 billion from SNAP. But instead of owning those cuts, Republicans are punting their problems to the states, forcing governors and legislators to do the dirty work of denying food assistance. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's political cowardice. This is an unfunded federal mandate, plain and simple. States would have to cover at least 5% of SNAP benefits and up to 25%. What they call skin in the game is unworkable. The hit to states' budgets would be massive, up to $4.5 billion over 10 years in Louisiana, $4 billion in Alabama, $15 billion in Florida, and $7.5 billion in my home state of Ohio. So what does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. It means fewer dollars for schools, for opioid response, for basic services. Any way you cut it, families lose. And if states can't pick up the bill, they will have to cut benefits or kick folks off the program, a program that currently provides $6 a day. $6 a day on average. This plan will take away food from kids, working families, veterans, seniors, and the disabled. It will hit red states, blue states, every state and every district. Even Republicans know how damaging this is. That's why they've delayed implementation until when? After the next election. But Fighting the consequences doesn't make them less real. Your own state legislators, Democrats and Republicans, oppose this plan. The National Conference of State Legislatures calls it fiscally unsustainable and warns it will harm the very people SNAP is meant to help. This is a shameful